Welcome back to another Tea to Grace podcast, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into the fascinating, often quite mysterious world of Neville Goddard.
Yeah, Neville Goddard.
It's a name you might have heard, maybe thrown around with things like the law of attraction.
Right, people often lump him in there.
But as we're hopefully going to discover today, his ideas seem to go much, much deeper, potentially connecting to, well, ancient wisdom, esoteric stuff, and maybe even hinting at things in modern physics.
That's absolutely right. Neville Goddard is, well, he's a figure who, despite being really prolific, lots of books, lectures, and the claimed success of his methods, he's still surprisingly underappreciated, maybe misunderstood in a lot of places.
Yeah.
His insights often get boiled down to simple self-help tricks.
Right, just manifest your dreams.
Exactly. And our goal here in this deep dive is to get past that surface level. We want to explore the core ideas from our source material, his life, this enigma of his mentor, Abdullah, the possible ancient roots of his knowledge, and what he really taught about assumption and consciousness. And we're sticking strictly to the insights from the conversation we're using as our source.
And that conversation is key. It features two really interesting voices. First, Nicola Bidozzi. He's a historian, writer, editor, deep background in ancient mysteries, religious traditions, especially around the Mediterranean. He's got a history degree from Florence University, founded Edizioni Aurora Boreale, and he's also a university professor, history of international relations, contemporary history. So quite the background.
Absolutely. Deep historical context.
And Nicola Bidozzi brought in our, let's say, specialist for this specific topic,
Right.
Andrea Monti. He's described as a spiritual researcher, also a sonographer and artist.
Right.
And he spent years looking into Eleusinian mysteries, but more recently, he's really focused intensely on Neville Goddard, apparently even done personal experiments with the techniques.
Yeah, Andrea brings that hands-on perspective. Their combined insights, Bidozzi's historical depth, and Monti's focused research on Goddard, it really gives us a fascinating angle. It connects Goddard's unique stuff to threads stretching back, like millennia.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're talking about someone seen as super important in some circles,
Definitely.
but maybe not widely known or understood properly elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, where do we even start with Neville Goddard? Let's begin with the man himself. What was his background, according to this source?
Okay, so the source gives us some key details. Neville Goddard, born in Barbados, 1905.
Barbados, right.
Yeah, came from a big family, pretty well off, actually. They were merchants, Jewish background, and apparently the Goddard name is still a big deal there, economically speaking.
Oh, okay.
But Neville, he was different. Even within this successful, sort of business-focused family, he stood out. The source uses the term black sheep.
The classic black sheep. Why? What were his interests?
Well, they just weren't aligned with the family business. From a young age, he was drawn to deeper stuff. Esoteric subjects, metaphysics.
Well, everyone else was counting beans, maybe.
Sort of, yeah. While his siblings were learning commerce, he was exploring these other ideas. Then, around 17, he makes a big move. Heads to America.
Wow, young.
Yeah, very young. And his dream, to be a dancer or, some kind of performer in the arts.
It's a complete break from the merchant background.
Totally. But interestingly, it wasn't like he hit the big time straight away.
Yeah.
No, the source says he had to take humble jobs, working in department stores, things like that, which must have been quite a contrast to his upbringing in Barbados.
Yeah, that's quite a shift. So he wasn't starting from a place of established success in America, that experience of maybe struggling or just doing mundane work. That seems kind of relevant to his later ideas about changing reality.
Absolutely. It suggests his understanding didn't come from someone who always had it easy, He knew the grind. But the key thing is, even during those tough early times, his deeper interests never faded. The source really emphasizes this lifelong pull towards hermetism, esoteric stuff.
He kept searching.
Constantly. Spending free time in bookstores, diving into this underground world of spiritual texts. It wasn't just a hobby, it was described as an innate drive, a need to find something more profound than just surface reality, which was what his family was mostly focused on.
That inherent drive.
Yeah, that predisposition for spiritual seeking is what ultimately led him to this really pivotal encounter.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and frankly mysterious. The source talks about his mentor, Abdullah. Tell us about meeting him, who Abdullah was based on this conversation.
Ah, yes, Abdullah. He's presented as the central, totally enigmatic figure, the direct source, supposedly, of Goddard's deep understanding.
How do they meet?
Well, according to the source, Neville heard about Abdullah and was encouraged to go listen to him speak. Apparently, Neville was reluctant at first. The source speculates maybe his Jewish background played a role in eventually going, but that's just speculation.
Right.
What made Abdullah stand out immediately was his background. He was a black man, described as being of Ethiopian Jewish origin.
Ethiopian Jewish, okay.
And he wasn't teaching standard religious stuff. He was offering a really unique, personal, spiritual take on the Bible, which in America at the time was pretty unusual. It suggests Abdullah had some real courage, real independence.
And their first actual meeting, it was something special.
Oh, yeah. Extraordinary. The source mentions the official biography of Neville by someone named Giacomo Bazzo, which recounts this. When Neville finally goes to one of Abdullah's meetings, Abdullah apparently greets him by name, straight away.
Knew his name.
And then says something like, "I've been expecting you, but you're 6 months late."
Wow. Okay, that would get your attention?
Totally. Neville was naturally stunned. Asked how he knew who he was, that he was supposed to be there. This moment is presented as, profoundly impactful, suggesting Abdullah had some kind of insight, foreknowledge, something beyond the ordinary, a powerful connection right from the start.
And that led to study, intense study.
Oh, yeah, it deepened massively. That same biography says Neville studied with Abdullah for 7 years.
7 years.
7 years. And get this, 7 days a week.
Whoa. No days off.
Apparently not. Full immersion. And their focus. Deep dives into Kabbalah and the Hebrew language. The source presents this intense period as the main explicit origin of the knowledge Neville Goddard later taught.
But Abdul himself remains mysterious.
That's the fascinating part. Outside of Neville's accounts, very little seems to be definitively known about Abdullah. He's consistently called mysterious. He presented as a Jewish religious teacher, but, and this is important, the source notes, he apparently never held any formal titles, like rabbi.
So his authority wasn't institutional.
Exactly. It came from somewhere else, which just adds to the enigma.
And his origin, the Ethiopian Jewish connection, that's seen as potentially really significant for the kind of knowledge he passed on.
Very much so, according to the discussion. Abdullah is linked to the Beta Israel people. You might have heard them called Falasha, though that term is less preferred now. They traditionally lived in the Gondar region of Ethiopia.
Right.
And this group, they had their own distinct interpretation and practice of Judaism. The source says it wasn't strictly canonical, not aligned with mainstream rabbinical Judaism. It was supposedly influenced by various currents, making it unique.
Okay, so potentially preserving something different or older.
That's exactly where the conversation goes, exploring the ancient roots. They talk about different theories for the origins of the Beta Israel, referencing texts like the Kibra Nagast.
The Queen of Sheba and Solomon's story.
That's one theory, the famous legendary one, linking them to that meeting, a dynasty, a connection between Jerusalem and Ethiopia. Huge historical weight there.
Right.
But the source speakers seem more intrigued by another theory, one that's apparently strong within the Beta Israel community itself, and potentially more significant for Abdullah's knowledge, the idea that they might descend from the tribe of Dan.
The tribe of Dan.
Yeah.
Like one of the lost tribes of Israel.
Exactly, one of the lost tribes. They're in the Old Testament, but then they sort of vanish from the main historical record. The source points out they're notably missing from the list of the 144,000 redeemed tribes in Revelation.
Interesting.
Historically, they apparently struggled with idolatry sometimes, even during the Exodus with Moses. Their ultimate fate, where they went, it's a big mystery in biblical history.
How does this connect to Sardinia? You mentioned the Mediterranean earlier.
Right. Here's where it gets really intriguing, based on the source's discussion of recent research. There's a theory linking the tribe of Dan to the Shardana.
Shardana. Who were they?
Ancient sea peoples mentioned in Egyptian records. They were known across the ancient world as fierce mercenary warriors, really skilled sailors. The conversation looks at two ways the Danites and Shardana might be connected. One idea, which they think is less likely, is that they were basically the same people. The more plausible idea they explore is that the Shardana were actually hired by the tribe of Dan, hired as armed escorts for their migrations.
Why would they need escorts?
Well, think about migrating back then, trying to claim new land, maybe the land promised during the desert journey. It was incredibly dangerous. No international law, no police. You had to defend yourself against other groups locals bandits.
Makes sense.
So for a group like the tribe of Dan, who maybe weren't primarily warriors hiring these elite, feared Shardana fighters would be a smart, practical move for survival and reaching their destination.
Is there any evidence for this link?
Intriguingly, yes. The source mentions a linguistic clue from a Sardinian writer named Melis. His research suggests the name Shardana might come from Shurdan, meaning princes of Dan.
Princes of Dan. What?
It's a compelling linguistic link, though not definitive proof on its own. Plus, they mention cultural parallels found in modern Sardinia that echo ancient Israelite traditions.
Like what?
Specifically, lamb sacrifice, which is central in Judaism, and a fasting custom called Sina Bura. This fast apparently involved eating only bitter herbs, which sounds a lot like the bitter herbs eaten during the Passover Seder.
Huh. Those are striking parallels.
They are. These echoes across centuries and geography are presented as strengthening the idea that this lineage, Danites, maybe Shardana, might have left a real historical footprint in Sardinia.
So putting it all together, Beta Israel, maybe tribe of Dan, Shardana links, Sardinia, this suggests Abdullah could be descended from this incredibly ancient, mysterious line carrying wisdom older or different than mainstream Kabbalah.
Yes. That's the profound question the source gets into. The implication is exactly that. This potential lineage could mean Abdullah was a conduit for very ancient knowledge, maybe more complete, more fundamental than later interpretations. And that deep wisdom could have been passed to Neville during those 7 intense years.
Okay, my mind is kind of blown already. And then there's this Book of the 3 Years.
Yes. This adds another layer of deep mystery. It's described as a scroll, supposedly found in Ethiopia. It's appeared online, but it's not officially recognized, which makes it controversial, enigmatic.
What does it say?
The source speaker reads some excerpts. It starts with this line: "Don't look for God among the clouds. Look for him where your bones tremble and your silence brightens." Very internal focus, right?
Yeah, immediately points inward.
Then it tells the story of a child named Abdullah, raised by a brotherhood called the Sons of Zapanat Paneah, translated as those who decipher the language of dreams.
Wow.
This brotherhood supposedly taught young Abdullah a specific technique. Create images in his mind, hold them with such focus they become solid in his heart. That sounds an awful lot like advanced visualization, doesn't it? Like Neville's core ideas.
Exactly like assuming the state.
Right. And the scroll says the child's real name was I Am What I See. Think about that name. I Am What I See. Perception creating reality. Then it says Abdullah was taken to Egypt at 13, to the underground temple of Dendera. Described not as a place for prayer, but a place where they dreamed while awake.
Dreamed while awake.
And there, the scroll claims, he learned the art of transposing bodies. The source speaker directly links this to Neville's teaching of assuming states of reality, shifting your internal state, your feeling body, until reality conforms.
It's the same core idea.
And an elder Coptic Jew there supposedly told him, your imagination is the fire. It is the name of God. It is what you are in the moment you feel you are it. Linking imagination, identity, God within, central Neville themes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How does the scroll story end?
Briefly, it mentions Abdullah meeting a figure in the Libyan desert carrying an obsidian tablet, telling him to bring Kabbalah to the West, but reduced to its essence. Imagine and create.
Just imagine and create.
Yeah, the core creative power. And the scroll ends cryptically. That night, Abdullah died in a dream and was reborn in another body with another time. Metaphorical. Literal. Who knows?
So, Abdullah, real person carrying this ancient lineage and Egyptian training, or a symbolic figure Neville used to explain where his radical ideas came from.
Those are the two main possibilities discussed. Real, enigmatic teacher with this deep knowledge, or a symbol for insights gained through meditation, revelation, something non-traditional.
What do the source speakers lean towards?
The speaker presenting this leans towards him being real, citing consistent accounts, but they fully admit the mystery. Even photos could be faked, they say.
But real or symbolic, the figure represents this profound knowledge transmission.
Precisely. He's the bridge, however mysterious, connecting these ancient streams to Neville Goddard's unique synthesis.
Okay, let's pivot to Goddard's actual teachings then. The source strongly distinguishes his ideas from the modern law of attraction. What's the key difference?
This is super important. They stress this repeatedly. Goddard's work came way before things like The Secret. His approach was fundamentally different, not just about getting rich, though that could happen. The technique is the core difference.
Right, so what was his main concept?
In his earlier years especially, it was the law of assumption. And his famous phrase, living in the end.
Live in the end.
Yeah. And the distinction is crucial. It's not about attracting something you lack or want, because wanting just reinforces that you don't have it.
Ah, okay. So assuming is different.
Totally different. Assumption is about assuming the state, the feeling, the sensation, the inner reality of already having or already being the thing you desire right now.
Not wishing for it, but feeling from it.
Exactly. The source contrasts it clearly. Law of attraction often seems like focusing on something external, trying to pull it to you. Goddard taught praying from the desired state, operating your consciousness as if it's already real, not praying for it, which implies absence.
So it's entirely internal. You become the state of having it now in your consciousness.
Precisely. It's a deep internal shift, not external force, but occupying the state of consciousness, the emotion, that matches the reality you want. This creates an internal resonance of vibration that aligns you with that reality.
And Source connects this to quantum physics.
Yeah, they make that leap explicitly, discussing ideas like infinite possibility lines, parallel realities existing simultaneously.
Whoa.
In that view, Goddard's technique isn't magic. It's potentially a way for your consciousness to choose or sort of slide into a different reality variant, the one where your desire is already fulfilled by matching its emotional frequency internally.
Like tuning a radio.
Kind of, yeah. They even mention the TV show Dark Matter as a visual analogy for sliding between realities, clarifying it's a modern illustration, obviously not from Goddard's time.
That quantum angle makes it feel less mystical, maybe more like a principle of reality. So how does someone actually do this? What's the practical technique?
Okay, the source outlines it, often in 3 interwoven steps. First, awareness.
Okay.
This is huge. Becoming conscious that your external reality, the 3D world, isn't the ultimate truth. It's often an illusion, a matrix, shaped by ego, conditioning, beliefs, society. They link this to the Malkuth Sephira and Kabbalah material awareness, realizing the external isn't primary.
Got it. Step 2.
Acknowledge power, realizing that you, your consciousness, your I am, has the power to choose or influence your reality, moving from passive victim to active creator.
Okay. And the 3rd step?
Doing it.
Exercise the power. This is the core application. First, figure out the true feeling behind your desire. Often, whether it's money, love, career, the underlying feeling sought might be security or joy or freedom.
The core emotion.
Exactly. Then you consciously inhabit that feeling, that state of being, as if it's already real. Immerse yourself in the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
And this isn't about willpower.
Emphatically not. The source stresses. It's not forcing or struggling. It's flowing into the feeling, allowing it, and crucially ignoring the external 3D world if it contradicts your inner state. You hold the feeling regardless of appearances.
Why do people struggle with this then?
Good question. The source highlights a few reasons. 1, using willpower, I want this, actually reinforces not having it because you're coming from lack.
Counterintuitive. Right. And 2, trying to influence other people. The source is clear. Goddard taught you can't directly manifest or control another person's feelings or actions. They're co-creators too.
So you can't make someone love you?
Nope. The focus has to be on your internal state and general circumstances or objects, not manipulating other conscious beings.
That's a really important ethical point. Did Goddard himself offer examples from his own life? Stories where he used this?
Yes. The conversation highlights 2 key anecdotes he apparently shared often. The most famous is manifesting his trip home to Barbados.
Ah, yes. You mentioned Barbados earlier.
Right. He was in New York, needed to get home for Christmas, but was broke, no money, no job prospects. He called Abdullah.
And Abdullah said,
Simply, think from being there. Not of Barbados, but from it.
live in the end.
Exactly. So Neville started doing it. Walking around New York, he'd imagine feeling the Barbados sun, seeing palm trees, hearing the sounds, feeling the emotion of being home. He lived in that state internally.
And what happened?
Just 2 days before the last possible ship sailed to get him home for Christmas, a letter arrives from his brothers in Barbados, saying Christmas wouldn't be the same without him, and here's a check for the exact passage fare.
Wow. The timing, the source. That's specific.
Very. And Neville apparently told this story not as a fluke, but as proof the principle worked consistently for him over decades. One speaker points out you can't really fake results like that for 30 or 40 years of teaching, writing, lecturing. He couldn't be a truffator or a trickster if there wasn't something effective happening.
That longevity does lend credibility. What was the second anecdote?
Getting discharged from the military during wartime. He apparently applied his method to that situation and got out remarkably fast, just a few weeks, when it was normally incredibly difficult and dangerous. He attributed it directly to applying the law or command.
Even against seemingly rigid systems like the military, these stories make it feel more concrete. How do the source speakers view these claims?
They see these examples, plus his consistent teaching over a long career, books, radio, lectures, as strong signs. His methods were genuinely effective, at least for him, and likely for others who really applied them. The combination suggests he was teaching from lived experience, not just theory.
Okay, let's loop back to those ancient roots Nicola Bizzi focuses on. Are there parallels in older traditions to Goddard's ideas about intention, state, influencing reality?
Absolutely. This is where the context really broadens. The source mentions Kavanaugh in Kabbalah-focused intention concentration, especially in prayer.
Right, intention.
That idea of directed intention is definitely foundational in many spiritual or magical practices throughout history, using willpower, focused energy to manifest something.
But Goddard's assumption is slightly different.
They maintain that distinction, yeah. Kavanaugh is focused intention, assumption is inhabiting the state. More like resonance or alignment, less like forceful willing. A subtle but key difference in feeling, they suggest.
Any other ancient examples?
They bring up the Etruscans, referencing that novel Terms the Etruscan. The character Terms, despite facing huge challenges, seems to get exactly what he needs when he focuses his mind and will on his goals. It's framed as applying a kind of focused intention within an ancient worldview where life was seen as interacting with unseen forces.
Like negotiating with the divine.
Something like that. It ties into a broader idea of energy manipulation in ancient cultures. Bizzi notes the Etruscans didn't divide sacred and profane like we do. Knowledge was holistic. Even money wasn't just stuff. It was energy to be manipulated, attracted, moved.
Energy, not just coins.
Right, which resonates with influencing circumstances, financial or otherwise, by understanding underlying principles, not just external effort.
And this connects back to the quantum physics idea.
Explicitly, they draw the parallel to the observer effect again, the observer influencing the observed. Even if it's just at the quantum level initially, it provides a modern scientific lens that seems to echo the ancient esoteric idea. Consciousness impacts reality. Observer and observed are linked.
Mind-bending stuff. Any other ancient methods mentioned?
Yeah, they touch on using resonance and vibration, ancient megalithic sites, chanting, drumming, and rituals, seen as ways to create altered states, maybe manipulate reality or direct energy through sound and vibration.
Sound affecting reality.
That's the idea. And then Nicola Bizzi shares this really powerful modern anecdote about collective resonance.
Oh, yeah.
He basically launched an idea online, just an idea to counter a Rodin exhibit he felt was negative, by celebrating Florence's baptistry, the Gate of Paradise.
Oh, okay.
And it just took off spontaneously. Thousands of people started gathering daily outside the baptistry, and without organization, they just started chanting Om together.
Thousands chanting Om.
Yeah. Bizzi describes this incredibly strong collective vibration. It apparently unsettled authorities, got media attention, created a real palpable shift in the atmosphere. He sees it as a real-world demo of collective resonance influencing reality.
Wow. That's amazing.
And Andrea Monti backs this up with his personal experiments using a simple EEG device. He says practices like meditation, chanting physically change brain waves, alpha, theta states, memorable changes linked to altered states, potentially influencing perception or reality. It provides a physiological link.
Incredible connections.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the transmission mystery. Beyond Abdullah, was Goddard part of other movements?
Yes. The source places him within the New Thought movement in America, alongside figures like Emerson, Phineas Quimby, who came from mesmerism, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And interestingly, Beverly Randolph, who founded the American Rosicrucians and also supposedly claimed some connection to Abdullah.
Others claimed Abdullah too.
Apparently. But the source observes that while others might have claimed a link, Goddard's understanding and application seem uniquely profound, which makes them wonder, was he just the best student? Or did he get a deeper initiation? This leads to a compelling comparison Bizzi makes. Franz Kellmer.
Who was he?
An enigmatic figure from the late 1700s, described as a Pythagorean hierophant, Danish merchant, lived in Egypt, got secret initiations, then traveled Europe, reportedly selecting individuals like Cagliostro, Don Pernetti, Adam Weishaupt.
Big names in esoteric history.
Exactly. Initiating them, helping found secret societies like the Illuminati, transmitting ancient knowledge, possibly Eleusinian, Egyptian, Pythagorean to influence the world.
So Kilmer is like a parallel to Abdullah, a mysterious transmitter of hidden wisdom.
That's the suggestion. It puts Abdullah into a potential historical pattern of these elusive figures transmitting ancient knowledge to chosen individuals to shape things. Makes the Goddard story part of a larger hidden history.
But the core mystery remains. Was Abdullah real? Symbolic? A mix? And where did Goddard's unique insights truly come from? Beta Israel. Dendera, somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. The source speakers emphasize that while the official story is Abdullah and Kabbalah, the sheer depth and effectiveness of Goddard's teachings hint that maybe something older, more complete was transmitted. It remains a profound mystery.
Okay. Now, later in life, Goddard's focus shifted from the law, or command, for manifesting desires, to something called the promise.
Yes, a crucial shift. The promise, as described, was beyond just improving your life. It was about total spiritual evolution moving towards unity, the one.
A higher goal.
Definitely. They connect it back to the Kabbalah tree of life. The law is like mastering the lower levels, the material world, Malkut, the outer pillars of duality. The promise is the ascent up the central pillar towards Keter, the crown unity, divine connection.
His life path mirrored the tree.
It seems so, as described. From satisfying desires to seeking union with the divine.
And how did he view the promise? Could you achieve it through technique?
No, that's the key difference. Unlike the law of assumption, he taught the promise isn't something you pursue or make happen, it's grace. It either happens to you, this profound realization, or it doesn't.
And if it doesn't?
You reincarnate, continue the journey. If it does happen, you move beyond that cycle to a higher level, united with the source.
So his teaching evolved from a practical system for living better here to a path for ultimate spiritual realization, a divine homecoming.
Precisely. It suggests the law wasn't just about getting stuff, it was maybe even a preparation for this deeper transformation, the promise.
The source conversation also had some very personal stories, right?
Yeah.
How these ideas touched the speakers.
Yes. Andrea Montai talks about his years experimenting with Goddard's techniques, calls himself a mad scientist, using tools like that EEG to test things personally. It adds this layer of personal conviction that these aren't just theories for him.
He tried it himself.
Right. And Nicola Bizia shares that incredibly intense story, sconvolgente, he calls it, shocking, about the near-miss plane crash in 2009.
The Tehran flight.
Yeah. Persistent premonition of a crash for days, couldn't sleep, saw plane falling, almost canceled, considered taking buses and trains instead.
That's a strong feeling.
Very strong. He ended up taking the flight, but did a prayer beforehand, basically, if it's inevitable, protect me. His flight landed fine in Rome, but another plane, same airline, Iran Air, left Tehran at the same time, but heading to Amsterdam. That plane crashed on landing, fatalities among the crew.
Oh my God, that's chilling.
Deeply chilling. He sees it as suggesting an event was somehow in the field, maybe fated, but his personal outcome was shifted, like the falling tile landing near you instead of on you. For him, it validates the idea of influencing reality variance.
But that's a powerful personal testament.
And both speakers noted how in moments like that near death, intense focused time perception often changes, slows down, stops, suggesting maybe a momentary exit from the normal matrix of linear time, reinforcing the idea that our perception of reality, including time, is linked to our state.
These personal stories really bring it home. Okay, this has been an incredible journey. Neville Goddard, Abdullah, ancient mysteries, quantum physics, personal experiences. So wrapping up, what's the key takeaway for us, the listener, tomorrow again?
I think the core message from this deep dive is Goddard's teaching, understood properly, isn't just another manifestation trick. It's a deeper philosophy about the power of consciousness, about potentially choosing or influencing reality, not by fighting the outside world, but by changing your internal state, feeling the end result now.
Living in the end.
Exactly. But it requires inner work, becoming aware of conditioning, understanding your true desires, the feeling behind them, mastering your emotional state. It's not always easy. It's a discipline.
Yeah, sounds like real work.
It does.
Yeah.
But what makes this exploration so compelling is that blend ancient wisdom, mysterious transmissions, lining up with hints from cutting-edge physics. It suggests maybe these different paths are pointing to the same fundamental truths about reality and our potential within it.
It definitely challenges how we usually think about reality and our role in it. Maybe we're not just watching, but participating.
Yeah.
It was a true deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of Neville Goddard, Abdullah, ancient mysteries, and the power of assumption.
It's a topic that definitely invites more thought, maybe some personal exploration too.
For sure. And maybe ask yourself, What does it really mean in a felt sense to live in the end? What would it feel like right now if your deepest hopes were already real? How might focusing on that feeling start to shift things for you?
It's a powerful question.
Thank you again to our expert for navigating all this complex and truly fascinating material with us.
Sure, a really deep dive indeed.
Until our next deep dive,
Yeah.
be well and keep exploring.